So here's my recap on Dexter Season 3, Episode 4, which is entitled All in the Family. We have a lot of moving parts in this particular episode. Everybody has a little role to play. Let's first talk about Dexter and Rita. Dexter, at the beginning of this episode, kind of passingly mentions to Rita that maybe they should get married and kind of has an awkward marriage proposal at the beginning of the episode. But later on, they go over to Miguel's house for dinner. So it's at that stage where Rita actually divulges that the last time she got married, she did it because she was pregnant, and she doesn't ever want to do that again. Dexter doesn't see, he seems kind of distant, and she doesn't want to be involved with that at this stage. And Dexter kind of wonders what he's doing wrong. Now, we've got Masuka has a little role to play in this episode, too. He is going to have a keynote presentation that he has to do at a forensic conference. And he can't get any of his colleagues to go with him. Nobody wants to go see what he has to say, and it really upsets Masuka. So he has a little story in this episode. Now, we've also got Deborah, who is still being harassed by the officer who's trying to get her to do this undercover investigation on Quinn. She's still texting her, trying to get her to do something, and Deborah won't give her the time of day. But at the same time, Deborah starts noticing that Quinn's driving a really nice car. And she actually goes to see the informant to try and get some information on Quinn, which really doesn't go anywhere other than the fact that the informant tells her, at one point, he got me out of a jam, a really big jam. So she knows something's going on behind the scenes, but she's not really investigating Quinn and doesn't want to have anything to do with looking at one of her colleagues. We've also got a murder that occurs during this episode. There's a woman who ends up finding her boyfriend dead. He had been bludgeoned, and she goes in for questioning. Nobody can get anything out of her. She's really distraught. Dexter notices this, and then Quinn comes in and is able to calm her down to try and get some information. He does this several times during the episode. So Dexter realizes later in the episode that she was probably the killer through the evidence, and they are able to get that information from her, and at the end, she does admit she did kill him. She got caught, and there's nothing she can do about it. What was interesting is Dexter was so curious earlier in the episode at how she was acting that maybe that's the kind of behavior that Rita wants to see in him instead of him being so stiff all the time. And he realizes at the end of this episode when she gets caught that she did a really good job pretending to be somebody she wasn't. And she almost could have gotten away with this had they not pried a little bit further. So Dexter's like, maybe I can bring on some of that charm, and she was a good actress. Maybe I can be a good actor. So he does go home, and he formally does propose to Rita, and she agrees to marry him. Now, we've also got Miguel. There's a lot going on with Dexter and Miguel in this episode, and Miguel and Maria as well. Let's talk about Miguel and Maria. There is a case about a guy named Chicky Hines that looks like he was wrongly imprisoned, and Maria is really close to uncovering facts that bear that. Well, Miguel is the one who had prosecuted. He works for the state. He was the one that had prosecuted Chicky Hines, and he doesn't believe that he could be innocent. But she's uncovering some facts that could prove that. We've also got Dexter getting a little bit closer to Miguel. They end up on the beach talking to each other. They also find out in this episode that we've got Miguel's brother. He's thinking about bringing his brother into the fold and saying, hey, my brother's in pain after what you did for me. Maybe we need to bring my brother in and let him know that we had killed Freebo. Dexter is not okay with that. So he kind of concocts a scheme later to make Miguel's brother look kind of crazy because his brother does come into the department a couple of times in the episode and raises hell because they haven't found the killer yet. And Maria ends up actually having to kick his brother out at one point during the episode. And so Dexter concocts this scheme later on and gets Miguel to realize that his brother is kind of flying off the handle and may not be a good guy to trust. And that's kind of how this episode ends. It's kind of an epiphany all in the family about Dexter realizing he can act if he needs to have a normal life with Rita, and he's going to strive to do that. We've got everything going on with Chicky Hines and figuring out if he's really innocent and getting out of jail, which could affect Miguel and who he is. And we've got Miguel really looking for a way to bring his brother into the fold after Dexter had killed Freebo to, end their nightmare a little bit. And so this episode is kind of, it's the 4th episode of the season. Everything is kind of ramping up. And so this is just one aspect of what is going to happen coming up later in the season. This season is very much about Miguel and Dexter, but there's also a lot with Dexter and Rita, and we're going to be seeing that in upcoming episodes. Now, one thing I did forget to mention, and this is a pretty big deal in this episode, is that we've got Batista, who actually ends up with a hooker. Well, when he's in the room with the hooker notices that he's a cop or knows that he's a cop and tells him to be quiet because they're listening in, and she's able to get him to leave without him getting caught. Well, she comes to him later and saying, the last thing this department needs is a big scandal with you being caught with a hooker. And that's when he kind of lets her know, he's had a hard time in his life. He appreciates her letting him go. She promises, look, I've got the information. I can nail you to the wall, but as long as you stay clean and you don't do this ever again, I'll keep it under wraps. So there's definitely going to be more coming up with her in future episodes as well, and that whole situation with him and that undercover officer who was acting as the hooker. Please hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You will be notified as I have new reviews go up.